there is a theme that the Church of God has. There's a theme that our denomination has. And I haven't thought a whole lot about it, yet it's always been before me. But during camp meeting, it was always on the back wall. It was our backdrop, so to speak. And the theme of the Church of God has been this. It's been forward together in changing times. And that's been the theme of the Church of God. And I don't know, something resonated with me. I've always seen it. You know, there's those things that you always see, but there's that one day you wake up and you just see it differently. Has it ever happened to you? I just begin to see it differently. And I begin to sense that God was trying to say something through this. And not just to a denomination as he has been, but maybe to a church and maybe to your life. And I think what God is trying to say this morning is what he's been saying for a long time. And maybe he's just trying to take a lot of different things that have been happening, maybe this past week or maybe this past month or this past year, and he wants to bring it together and he wants to make some sense out of it for you this morning. And it's no different than what we've been looking at. If you came to camp meeting, if you're familiar with the denomination, the Church of God, that the idea is this, that we're supposed to move forward together in changing times. And what God told me to do was look at it in a reverse order. He said, Brett, times are changing. So what the church needs to do is get it together so we can move forward. He said, that's what I'm saying. Instead of going from the top to the bottom, let's work our way from the bottom to the top. Times are changing. And so what God is speaking to the church in the midst of all of this change, incredible change, is that we need to get it together so we can move forward. God's kingdom is not about one man or one woman moving forward. It's about the church moving forward. That's God's plan. That's his idea. And so God took me to Ruth. And Ruth is really the story that I could not get away from. And Ruth is important because not because of so much Ruth, not at least in the beginning, but Naomi and Elimelech. They were some Jewish people living in Bethlehem. You remember Bethlehem, right? But this is Old Testament now, before Christ was born. And so in Bethlehem, the Bible says that everything ran dry. Famine hit the land. And Elimelech and Naomi decided they would go somewhere else. And so they went to Moab. And they went to Moab because they heard that maybe there was something going on in Moab. There were some jobs available in Moab. The ground was a little easier to dig in Moab. So they went to Moab. And when they went to Moab, the Bible says they had a couple kids, Mahlon and Chilion, 2 boys. But within 10 years, the Bible says that Naomi lost her husband, Elimelech. He died. We don't know why he died, but he died. And the Bible says that her 2 sons married, Orpah and Ruth. But within a little bit more time, the 2 sons died. And Naomi has seemingly lost everything. And everything Ruth knew to be true. She lost not only a husband, but she lost a brother-in-law, and she lost a father-in-law. They lost everything. And God said to me, he said, Brett, times change. Things change. Talk about some great change. And they had no idea where their next meal was coming from. They had no idea what they were going to do. They had lost everything that they held dear. And so Naomi decided that she would go back to Bethlehem. Because she heard that one more time that there was bread in the house. That God yet again was working one more time. There was provision. She needed to go back. But what she wasn't thinking about and what she wasn't concerning herself with was Ruth. And so amidst all of this great change in Naomi's life, in Ruth's life, in Orpah's life, the Bible says that Ruth made a decision. Now see, we always look at the book of Ruth and Ruth says and Naomi says, your people are going to be my people. Your God's going to be my God. Where you go is where I'm going to go. And be it far from me. And God, strike me down dead right now if I am not with you, heart, soul, mind, and strength. Don't let anything get in between. We look at determination. We look at perseverance. But what I saw was unity. Because she was pairing herself with Naomi. And she was saying that you and I are going to become like one person. And I don't know what it is about you, and I don't know what it is so much about this God that you serve. But what I do know is this: there is something in my spirit that says you and I have got to come together and let nothing bring us apart. And so amidst all of this change, Ruth made a decision that she was going to get together with somebody and she was going to stick with her come hell or high water, no matter what the enemy might bring. And so they got together. Orpah stayed back in Moab, and the Bible says that they went forward. They went to Bethlehem. And if you know the story, Boaz came on the scene, and Boaz ended up marrying Ruth. And all of a sudden, Naomi got everything restored back to her. All of a sudden, Boaz and Ruth had a son, and he became, I believe, the great-great-grandfather of David. All of a sudden, we find somebody who was lost in a desert, heard about a promise. Times were changing. They got it together. They moved forward. And what looked like a situation that was going to destroy them, God took and brought them and stuck them right in the lineage of his son, Jesus Christ. She was a Moabitess woman. She had no business. She wasn't Jewish. But God said, I don't care about the world's business. I don't care about what the world would say. I'm taking things that are lost and destitute and going the wrong way, and I'm raising them up in the midst of all of this change that may be going on in your life. God says, if the church will get it together, if Ruth will take herself and pair herself with Naomi, then God says, I'll bring you to Bethlehem. I'll bring the provision. I'll bring the promise. I'll bring the power. I'll do everything that you could ever dream of and even more. It's time to go forward, God says. It's time to go forward.